The president huddles with his cabinet next hour. He does so facing what you might call a high-wire challenge to navigate a still quite big to-do list while trying to defy midterm election history. 63 days, 9 weeks exactly, until we count your votes, and the president's approval rating remains in traditionally perilous territory. But, an important but, it is on an upward trajectory, and every tick up improves Democrats' odds. Today, a cabinet meeting to promote progress made over the summer on semiconductors, on climate, on health care, and on taxes. The Biden bet that showing your government at work can help reframe the midterms as a choice between normal and crazy.
This is not your father's Republican Party. This is a totally different party, man. These guys are different. I've worked with a lot of Republicans, conservative Republicans I work with. Got a lot done, but there was always something decent about the work. This new group headed by the former president, the former defeated president, we found ourselves in a situation where we're either going to look forward or look backwards. And it's clear which way he wants to look. It's clear which way the new MAGA Republicans are. They're extreme.
With me to share their reporting and their insights, Laura Barone-Lopez of the PBS NewsHour, Cleve Wootson of the Washington Post, Margaret Talev of Axios, and Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections. So the president sits down with his cabinet next hour. He wants to say, we're doing things relevant to your lives. Therefore, defy history. Don't vote against the president. Don't vote against the president's party. You saw the president on the trail yesterday. How do they at the White House see his role in these critical final 9 weeks?
Well, they want him to be out there as much as possible. So I think that we can expect to see, just in the past week, we saw him out about, I think, 3 to 4 times on the campaign trail. And we can expect that to continue. At the White House, they want to see him out there on the road, even if there are some Democrats who don't necessarily want to be seen next to the president. Because again, if it isn't the president, then who else is going to push a lot of the big accomplishments that they got done, that they had on their wish list, which was infrastructure, which was prescription drug reform, and all of these other elements, as well as the fact that now, the president is starting to insert himself and speak very directly about what he sees as a threat to democracy, and specifically what he sees as driving it within the Republican Party.
So Team Biden and some Democrats think the president should be out there more often. But just this morning, right before I came up, getting more incoming from Democrats saying, we're not so sure about that. Because if you look at the fundamentals of an election, Nathan, Republicans still have an edge on the economy. Republicans have a giant edge on crime. Republicans have a significant edge on inflation. There are a lot of Democrats who think, the president's in charge. If you're a Democrat at home, you say it's not his fault, okay, but he's in charge. That's the way it normally works. Who think Joe Biden should stay out of the way, do things here in Washington, try to keep ticking his numbers up a little bit, but let Democrats instead focus on this, abortion.
Yeah. Any Democrat that's on the ballot wants Biden's numbers to improve for this fall, but they also don't want an election that is based on, do you think Joe Biden is doing a good job or not? Because even if his job approval rating is getting a little bit better, still a majority of Americans believe or disapprove of the job that he's doing. So there's that balance of, all right, get him out there, promote the accomplishments, but also keep the focus on Republicans, because the more the voters are focused on former President Trump, focused on infighting within the Republican Party or what Republicans are doing, that is where Democrats benefit, because voters are primed for change. But if they see Republicans as too extreme as an alternative, then they might just stick with the status quo.
And Trump's reemergence as a central figure in the midterms has given Biden a window to get back in to the race with a different impact. When he is center stage now with the microphone, he's not saying, hey, this election's a referendum on me. He's saying this election's a choice between the direction we're moving in and going back to the morass of the months after 2020. I don't know if that's going to work. Abortion's probably a clearer political bet in some states, but that plus his poll numbers inching up has made it possible for him to get back out there.
And you see a slight evolution in how he's talking about that. And when he is out there, he had the fundraiser, was not on camera, where he talked about semi-fascism. Then he had the speech in Philadelphia where he talked about mega extreme elements. And then yesterday, listen to this, it's just a little bit more moderated.
Yep.
Not every Republican is a MAGA Republican. Not every Republican embraces that extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with mainstream Republicans my whole career. But the extreme MAGA Republicans in Congress have chosen to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But together, We can and we must choose a different path forward.
The in Congress part was significant there, number one, because a lot of Republicans are trying to say he's smearing Trump voters, right? He's smearing the voters out there. He's trying to make that distinction. But also, not every Republican is a mega Republican. That seems a little bit more nuanced in the idea that if the Democrats are going to defy the odds, and especially in these Senate races, win battleground states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, they're going to need some Republican votes to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you have Biden trying to define the Republican Party in a way that benefits him, right? I can't work with the MAGA folks, but I can work with everybody else. And I think that's because he still wants to be that guy that can sway, moderate Republican voters. And if you're, calling all of them MAGA Republicans, it just doesn't work.
And it took the president a long time to even get to this point to distinguish and to actually go forcefully after what he is calling MAGA Republicans. And I was talking to Senator Schatz of Hawaii, who said that part of that is because Biden has long worked with a lot of these Republicans. He still considers some of them friends, and so it's difficult for him to even paint them in this way or characterize them in this way. But he's not the first president to warn of domestic threats internally.
And so the challenge, or I don't know the answer to the question, but what is the best role in the final 9 weeks, in the sense that if you listen to the road yesterday, you just heard the contrast there with MAGA Republicans in Congress, but the president also talking about some of his achievements, including the Democrats passed a bill after years of trying. They passed a bill that would allow the government to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs. Biden says, big win for you.
We beat pharma this year. We beat pharma this year, and it mattered. We're going to change people's lives. We finally beat pharma.
So at the cabinet meeting, he'll talk about that. He'll talk about other things they did in the rearview mirror, important things this summer. What about the last 9 weeks? What does the president hope to achieve? What does he want his Democratic friends in Congress to achieve? Including on the table is the idea that they will try, maybe attaching it to the resolution to keep the government open, the government spending, to codify same-sex marriage.
That's right. The codification of same-sex marriage, the return to this promise to cap insulin prices at $35 a month or so. There are a few items like this that there's an antitrust bill that big tech has been fighting that Democrats want to get credit for bringing to a vote, at least. To some extent, whether they get these things or not matters not as much as their ability to say, look, we tried. But if they could, they believe, as the leadership aides described it to us, that would be the icing on the cake of what they see as moving in a really good direction. Will it be enough to hold the House of Representatives? History says no, but it wasn't even a remote possibility a few weeks ago. The fact that it is now is really important. I want to say one other thing. Some of this may be personal if Biden was watching any of Trump's rally over the weekend, because my colleague Jonathan Swan was there for TV, for Family Safe Environment. It's a pretty raunchy set of messaging inside those rallies about Biden, about Kamala Harris. If there were a Democratic ad contrasting the scene in that rally to the scene at Biden's Labor Day rallies, you really would see a different message. That is personal, it's vendetta-based, it's about grievance. Biden is trying on abortion, on the economy, on some of these social and policy issues, trying to show the Democrats are at least inching the ball forward.
You make a critical point there in the sense that, again, there'll be a debate about how much the president should be out there and be visible, where he should be visible, maybe where he should stay away from. But the idea, the reemergence of Trump, in the sense that if we went back a few months, Nathan, and you're looking at your projections, the idea that Democrats are way underwater on crime compared to Republicans, that Republicans have this advantage on inflation. This had a traditional suburban reaction. The suburbs, which made George H.W. Bush president, which made George W. Bush president, we're going back toward the Republicans on crime and inflation. Trump reemerges along with the abortion issue, and we see these swings back in the suburbs again. And House races are different. We'll talk about that later in the program. But in Senate races or races for governors, if they're competitive, they are decided in the suburbs. And right now, what we thought was a Republican advantage seems to be drifting away.
Yeah, I think we see suburban voters, among other voters, but conflicted between the current economic environment with the threat of what could happen if Republicans are in charge or if Democrats remain in charge. It's that tension. What I think is interesting about what Biden is doing now, and remembering back to 2010, when there was criticism that President Obama, after Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act, he did not stump. He was not out trying to sell it, and he kind of let Democrats, he hung them out to dry, and they got walloped. But this time, at least Biden is out there trying to sell the agenda, and it's a marked difference. We'll see if it's enough.